Joining me now, Head of Investments at the Government Employees Pension Fund, Sifiso Sibiya. Sifiso, welcome.
Thank you, Zoe.
So Sifiso, you've just come off stage speaking about some very relevant topics in the pension funds industry, specifically with the GEPF. How do you manage to maintain flexibility and remain nimble with such large scale?
Yeah, so I'll say from two angles. So one, from a governance angle, we have developed certain, I would say, rules and strategies in the sense of getting approvals through the process quicker. So where you'll have investment committee and board sitting in the same meeting to ensure that decisions, if they're urgent, can be made quicker. So basically reducing the lag. So those are the strategies in order to basically have a more nimble process from a governance point of view. From an asset size point of view, it is a bit difficult, largely because at least 30% of the JSE market capitalization is GEPF money. So what that entails is that any movement in the investment strategy does take time. So unfortunately, from an asset side point of view, things need to be a bit more slow to ensure that you don't have adverse market movements against the fund.
So you've mentioned that sometimes to achieve a certain tactical shift might take a little bit longer to implement. So how do you plan for different market movements and tactical shifts?
So in doing that, I'd say the key tool that we use is the asset liability modeling, in the sense that it then provides you your true north, as it were, in terms of your investment objectives. What that then entails is that you'll have your strategic asset allocation, and if it does change from time to time, we then have a transition plan, which broadly takes at least 3 to 5 years to implement. So you'll then have your approved asset allocation and an interim asset allocation, and in between even those, you have more interim asset allocations that basically give you a glide path to what you want to achieve. So essentially, that's the approach that we use from both a strategic and a bit more short-term from a timing perspective in terms of asset allocation.
So with regards to global interest rates that are rising, do you see this as a short-term market occasion that's taking place at the moment? Are you reacting to global interest rates rising? Are you seeing it as a long-term or a short-term move? And how are you adjusting durations to capitalize on these moves?
So I think there's two components to the questions there. So one is the high interest rate component, and secondly is the duration. So I'll respond to those basically in two parts. So the first part on high inflation. So if you look at year-on-year inflation from about the year 2000 or 99, we've had pretty stable and low inflation, but it has started rising, I'd say, a bit materially from the end of last year. So obviously then the question is, will the trend continue to go up? So that is, I would say, is an existential question that ourselves and other global market players are trying to solve for. My reflections are that you do have some constraints on the supply side, which will continue to push inflation higher. But in terms of central bank policy, from a South African point of view, we have, I would say, steadily and systematically followed an inflation targeting approach, which kept inflation low in the period that I've mentioned. So I'd say, yes, there is upside risk to inflation, but I think our Reserve Bank will do its best to keep it lower. So in terms of the second part of your question around duration, so we do have, I would say, a fund which is open to both active, and we have pensioners there. And duration is an actual thing that we actually keep our eyes open for. Because when you have active members who are younger in the fund, it means they'll stay there for longer. They'll still become pensioners. And with medical technology, they will actually live for longer. So The only way to do that is and mitigate for the risk related to long duration is following a liability-driven investment strategy, or LDI. And basically how we implement it is by being exposed more to long duration assets. In particular, we target to get more exposure to inflation-linked bonds, but because of their short supply in the South African context, that is, we target inflation-linked government-issued and guaranteed bonds. So that's what I should mention there. That because of the short supply, what we tend to do is then move to more adjacent asset classes such as long-term nominal bonds and even infrastructure debt, because it also matches the profile of long, stable cash flows, inflation being baked into the cash flows themselves, and also them being long duration-wise. So yeah, that's how we're thinking about it, from both the risk of high inflation and the second component of long duration.
So Sifiso, just to close off the session, what is your outlook for the volatility that's going on globally as well as locally, and with climate change now being a structural change that's happening around the world, what is your outlook?
So I'd say from an outlook point of view, the first port of call is your investment horizon. So our investment horizon is long term, at the very least 10 years. And how we are seeing is we are very, I would say, positive in South African Inc. There's obviously at the moment a discount on South African Inc. Counters and entities. And as an allocator based in South Africa with an AUM, 90% of which is in South Africa, we do believe in the South African story because it helps us when the economy develops in terms of returns for our members and pensioners as well. So I'd say that's our outlook. We are moderately positive, notwithstanding the challenges and volatility which persists.
Sifiso, thank you very much for sharing your insights. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Terry.